YouTube, what's up? I'm Brian from the Whiskey Library.
And I'm Sniff from ScotchNSniff. And today we're here to talk about Oddball Whiskies. So, Whiskey Library is over today. They're going to be co-hosting, which is fun, because I think you guys co-hosted once before, and it's a good time, so we thought we'd do this again. And then, as always, when we start to do these videos, we're like, oh, we're going to do a bunch of reviews, and I write down a bunch of notes, and we're going to do this and that. But apparently, they brought over a bunch of Oddball whiskey bottles, so we thought we'd talk about them. So, where did you get these from, and what's going on here?
Sure. So, this is the Sagamore Vintner's Finish. So I picked that up at a liquor store up in Maryland, State Line. Woodford Reserve. This is their malt whiskey. Grabbed that here at a local store also in DC. And then this one is actually the Glover, which is a combination of Japanese and Scotch whiskey. And Tim, the other half of the Whiskey Library, actually bought that online.
All right, so you guys found a bunch of weirdo bottles from a bunch of different weird places. Because normally, Sagamore is kind of known for their Baltimore Rye, which is their standard offering. But they have been doing a bunch of weird finishes, and this Vintner's one is kind of super weird. So
yeah, so I mean, it's been finished. So it's a rye that's been finished in red wine, ex-red wine barrels. So you've got a lot of Shiraz influence with a little Pinot Noir and port.
Okay, so there is a little bit of port sweetness in there.
Yeah.
Which is weird, because tasting it, what did the notes say? It said something like, it's like
cinnamon and cherry?
Cherry and cinnamon, but you got cherry right up front off the bat.
Yeah.
And then you got this weird like rush of some strange amalgam of, Sagamore's rye spirit already tastes kind of vegetal and weird anyways, so throwing it under a cherry bus was kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely, I think, a unique spin on what they've already been doing. I think that it's, for me, I got a lot, even without reading the notes, it was like a cherry pie is, I think, how I described it. I think the finish gets a little bit
the finish was so
funky.
Weird. It was so weird.
But it's definitely, I mean, if you're looking for like a weird red wine finish, this is definitely the one to go with.
And it's definitely like strong cherry. So if you're looking for actual cherry notes as opposed to sherry notes, this is a weird oddball. So, and then you've got this Woodford here. Normally Woodford does their double oak and they do their regular Woodford, which kind of tastes like Christmas spices.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah, they've got a lot of nutmeg and just kind of that holiday cheer. Woodford also, I think a year, maybe even 2 years ago, came out with the Woodford Rye. So then they tried the rye. And then just a couple months ago, they released the malt. So this is a straight malt whiskey from Woodford. So it's 51% malt and then a combination of corn and rye. When you taste it, and even I think when you smell it, when we were doing that earlier, we were getting a lot of cucumber and dill. So we were assuming that it was a lot of rye influence as that secondary grain. And when we looked it up, so I mean, I think we were saying it was like 2%.
2% rye, but it's so rye forward, which is
I kind of feel like we need to double check that against like a million other places, because there's no way that's only.
We'll just call Woodford and be like, hey, what's going on in this thing?
Yeah.
It was so weird. It's actually kind of interesting to see more American distilleries that are using barley as the grain just to try something different so they can have a malt. But at the same time, it's like, wait a minute. It's funny because you were like, it's got some rye in it. And I remember I was tasting it and I'm like, wait a minute, why does this taste like dill and cucumber-ish?
Yeah. Like
fresh cucumbers. And I was like, what's going on here? And then you taste it and you're like, okay, I see we've got some cinnamon and spice and some other weird things going on. But it was like, wait, what? And then you said 2% rye, and I was like, no, that's impossible.
Well, and I think it, with the 51% malted barley, that really allows the rest of the grains to really shine through.
Apparently.
And a lot of barrel. I mean, that is a minimum of 4. I think it's probably the standard, Woodford, which is 6 to 8. So I mean, that's a decent amount of time for 51% malted barley in America to be aged.
Yeah, seriously.
So I mean, I think that's what we're getting off of that.
That's it. It's so weird and interesting. And this last one, so you guys said the story behind the Glover was this guy went to Japan and helped them mix a blend of Japanese whiskey and Scotch whiskey. Is that correct? Tim from the side. So that was like, that's what Tim told me. So yeah. I'm going to go with that. But you can really taste that in there. It's incredible because at first, while you're nosing it, it's this weird amalgam of notes, and then you taste it and it's like so heavily floral at first, and you're like, oh, this is Japanese.
Right.
But then you get that weird, and you can tell whatever's in it, it's at least slightly peated.
There's
so you've
probably
got that smoke that shines, and you're like, wait, what's happening here?
Yeah, I mean, so we had it for the first time just a week or so ago. Tim was gracious enough to crack it open, and again, I thought this is a Japanese whiskey that they threw like a tablespoon of, Scotch and, whatever. And then after kind of sipping out for a while, I was like, wait a minute, what is this? And we figured that we probably need to buy a couple more bottles to figure that out, because it's really complex when you get into it. And I really think that it would take someone a lot of time to really dissect all of the different flavors. It starts off, like you said, very floral, very, and then I think you get a little bit of that fruit note, and then at the very end you get some weird like spice, a little bit of peat, and it's all over the place. And so in terms of like an oddball, I mean, it's already an oddball, right?
It's super weird.
You've blended a Japanese whiskey with a Scotch whiskey, so right from the get-go, you're in for a weird treat. But then when you taste it, you're just like, it works together, and yet you can still get a lot of those unique characteristics between the two.
It seems like everybody does that in other countries when they're trying to get into the whiskey market. Like, I feel like Amroot did that with a fusion. They blended a bunch of Scotch, like the malt anyways, along with a bunch of their own malt, and threw the two together and then made this whiskey from it. And it comes out, being kind of weird and funky and different. Like, well, the Amroot actually reminds me a lot of like smoked mangoes, which are incredible. But this one is just, it's almost reminiscent of the older style Japanese blends where it's just a bunch of weird things all together. But if you, like you were saying though, if you sit down with it and you really give it some time to dissect, it's like, wait, all this other complexities showing up, and it's doing such a great job of tasting amazing.
Right.
So yeah, something.
Well, I mean, and I think that can actually be said for these other two as well. I think all of them, there is a level of complexity where if you let the bottle open, breathe for a little bit, you let your glass breathe for a little bit, you add water, you can play around with it over the course of a day, a week, a couple months, and I think that there's enough going on here with these oddballs that it's not like a one-trick pony for any of them.
Yeah, no, they're definitely more interesting than that, so that's kind of a good thing. All right, so wrapping it up, this episode was about weirdo oddball whiskeys that are not normal offerings from these distilleries, or just strange things. If you guys have any suggestions, questions, comment, concerns, or any kind of ideas of weird things that you guys think we should try that are off the beaten path, leave us comments down below and we'll try those.
Yeah.
Where can people reach the Whiskey Library?
Sure, so you can reach us, we're online at whiskeylibrarydc.com. You can email me at brian@whiskeylibrarydc.com, and then we're all over Instagram at just Whiskey Library DC.
Yeah, good stuff. Who doesn't like the Instagrams?
Yeah, I know.
That's where we're all from.
Yes.
Instagrams.
It's where we live.
We live on Instagram.
Instagram.
I built a house there. It's where I live now.
I have a condo.
Oh, nice.
Timeshare.
The Instagram timeshare. I can't sell it fast enough. Get rid of it. All right.
Oddball's done.
So ridiculous.